Evelyn, a humble woman who worked as a house help for Mr. Robert, a wealthy businessman, and his beautiful pregnant wife, Martha. She was pregnant with their first child. Every day, she arrived at their mansion, which was a grand and wonderful house, and diligently did her chores. Despite the large size of the house and the surrounding area, Evelyn never complained about the workload. Evelyn's life had been tough. She was a widow who lost her husband when she was 7 months pregnant with their only daughter, Lily, leaving her to face the world alone. Since then, life has not been easy, but Evelyn was determined to do everything she could to take care of her daughter. Now, Lily was 2 years old. Lily was a special child. She was beautiful, with big, bright eyes and a sweet smile that could melt anyone's heart. But Lily was also different from other children her age. She had autism, which meant she saw the world in her own unique way. Evelyn loved her daughter more than anything, and she always made sure to take extra care of her. Lily's condition made caring for her more challenging. Every day before work, Evelyn would drop Lily off at her neighbor's house for care and then head to Mr. Robert's mansion. On her way home, she would buy groceries and other necessities for her and Lily. This had been Evelyn's routine for the past 2 years. Mr. Robert was a millionaire who imported and sold building materials. His business was thriving because he sold his products at lower prices than his competitors, attracting customers from near and far. Evelyn had been working for him even before he married to Martha 6 months ago. Even though the work was hard and the hours were long, Evelyn never complained. She was grateful to have a job, especially one where Mr. Robert treated her with respect. He had always been kind to her, and he appreciated the hard work she did. He never had any complaints about her work because she did everything with care and dedication. Mr. Robert saw how committed she was to her job and appreciated her diligence. Martha had always lived a life of luxury. She came from a wealthy family, so she was used to having everything she wanted. When she married Mr. Robert, she moved into his beautiful mansion and expected that her life would be perfect. She was surrounded by comfort, had a loving husband, and soon, she would be a mother. On the surface, everything seemed ideal. But as time passed, Martha began to feel a sense of discontent. Although she lived in a mansion filled with beautiful things, there was something that bothered her. That something was Evelyn, the house help. Martha had noticed that her husband, Mr. Robert, always spoke highly of Evelyn. He often praised her for her hard work, saying how reliable and diligent she was. This began to stir feelings of jealousy and resentment in Martha's heart. Martha believed that since she was now the lady of the house, everything should be done exactly the way she wanted. But whenever she looked around the mansion, she would find small things that didn't meet her high standards. A vase might be slightly out of place, or a spot of dust might be on a shelf. These small imperfections irritated Martha, and she began to blame Evelyn for them. Things started to change after Mr. Robert married Martha. Martha was a beautiful woman, but she was also demanding and often critical. Unlike Mr. Robert, Martha seemed to find fault with everything Evelyn did. If a spot was missed while dusting or if the flowers weren't perfectly arranged, Martha would scold Evelyn, telling her she wasn't doing a good job. Martha's discontent grew daily. She started to criticize Evelyn more frequently. Every time she found the smallest mistake, she would call Evelyn and scold her. "This isn't good enough," she would say. "I expect more from you." No matter how hard Evelyn worked, Martha was never satisfied. Evelyn tried her best to meet Martha's expectations, but no matter how hard she worked, it never seemed to be enough. Martha would complain to Mr. Robert, saying that Evelyn was lazy or that she made too many mistakes. This made Evelyn's job even more difficult, but she kept working hard because she knew she had to support Lily. Martha constantly found fault with Evelyn's work and was determined to have her fired. Martha even began to complain to Mr. Robert about Evelyn. One evening, after they had finished dinner, Martha brought up the subject. "Honey," Martha said, her voice sweet but with a hint of frustration, "I think it's time we talked about Evelyn." Mr. Robert looked up from his newspaper, surprised by Martha's tone. "What about Evelyn?" he asked. "Well," Martha began, choosing her words carefully, "I've noticed that she's not as hardworking as she used to be. She's been making a lot of mistakes lately. The house isn't as clean as it should be, and she even comes late sometimes. I think she's getting lazy." Mr. Robert frowned. This didn't sound like the Evelyn he knew. "That's strange," he said thoughtfully. "Evelyn has always been very reliable. I've never had any complaints about her work." Martha sighed, trying to keep her frustration in check. "Maybe you haven't noticed because you're not here all day, but I see everything, and I can tell you she's not doing her job properly. I think it's time we find someone else who can do the work better." Mr. Robert was silent for a moment, considering what Martha had said. He trusted his wife, but he also knew Evelyn had been a good worker for a long time. "I'm surprised to hear this," he finally said. "But if you think there's a problem, I'll talk to her and see if we can fix it." Martha was not happy with Mr. Robert's response. She had hoped he would agree to let Evelyn go right away, but instead, he wanted to give her another chance. "I don't think a talk will change anything," Martha said, her voice edged with impatience. "She's had plenty of chances, and she keeps messing up. We need someone new." Mr. Robert shook his head slowly. "I understand you're upset, but Evelyn has been with us for 2 years. She's been through a lot, and she works hard. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt." Martha felt a wave of irritation wash over her. She wanted to argue, but she knew it would only make things worse. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But don't say I didn't warn you if things don't get better." As Mr. Robert went back to reading his newspaper, Martha sat quietly, her mind racing. She couldn't understand why her husband was so determined to keep Evelyn around. It made her feel like she wasn't being heard, and that only fueled her resentment further. The next day, Martha's frustration boiled over. She was sitting in the living room when she noticed a small scratch on the coffee table. It was barely noticeable, but to Martha, it was the last straw. She called Evelyn into the room and pointed at the scratch. "Do you see this?" Martha asked, her voice cold. Evelyn looked at the scratch and nodded. "Yes, madam. I'm sorry, I'll fix it right away." But Martha wasn't satisfied with just an apology. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," she said, her voice rising. "You're careless, Evelyn. You don't pay attention to details, and now look at what you've done. This is unacceptable." Evelyn felt a lump form in her throat. She had worked so hard to keep the house in perfect condition, and now it seemed like everything she did was wrong. "I'm really sorry, madam," she repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll do better." Martha crossed her arms and glared at Evelyn. "I don't want promises, Evelyn. I want results. If you can't handle this job, then maybe you shouldn't be here." Evelyn felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. She couldn't afford to lose this job. "I'll make sure everything is perfect from now on, madam," she said quietly. The next morning, Mr. Robert woke up early, determined to have a conversation with Evelyn. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off between his wife and Evelyn. Although Martha had insisted that Evelyn wasn't doing her job properly, Robert found it hard to believe. Evelyn had been with him for 2 years, and she had always been diligent and reliable. He knew he had to get to the bottom of this. Mr. Robert was leaving the house for work, when he saw Evelyn tending to the flowers outside. He decided it was time to address the issue. "Good morning, sir," Evelyn greeted him warmly. "Good morning, Evelyn," Mr. Robert replied. "I'm not happy with some of the reports I've been hearing about your work lately." Evelyn was taken aback. "Sir, I assure you, I'm not lazy. I've always done my best, just as I've done for the past 2 years." I was surprised when Martha mentioned it, Mr. Robert admitted. But she's the one who's here most of the time, so I thought perhaps something had changed. No, sir, Evelyn insisted. I haven't changed. I'm still doing my job the way I always have. Mr. Robert nodded, seemingly satisfied. If you ever have any challenges, don't hesitate to let me know. He took a deep breath and looked around the garden. The flowers were blooming beautifully, and the grass was neatly trimmed. Everything seemed in order. Thank you, sir, Evelyn said, feeling relieved as Mr. Robert walked back into the house. That evening, when Evelyn returned home, she found Lily with a high fever. Her little girl was too weak to even move, and Evelyn's heart ached with worry. She stayed up all night, caring for Lily and giving her medication. But by morning, Lily's condition had worsened. Evelyn knew she had to stay home with her daughter, so she called Martha to explain. Hello, ma'am, Evelyn said hesitantly, I'm sorry, but I may not be able to come to work today. My daughter is very sick and needs my attention. Martha's voice was cold and unyielding. Evelyn, you must come to work. If you don't, just know that you've lost your job. Evelyn was devastated. What was she supposed to do? She couldn't leave her sick child with a neighbor, but she couldn't afford to lose her job either. Then, an idea struck her. I'll take Lily with me to work, she thought. It wasn't ideal, but it was the only solution she could think of. So, she got ready, tied Lily to her back, and headed to Mr. Robert's mansion. When Evelyn arrived at the mansion, she found Martha sitting at the door. Martha's face twisted in anger when she saw Evelyn with Lily. Where do you think you're going with that thing on your back? Martha sneered. Don't bring that into my house. Please, ma'am, Evelyn pleaded, she's sick. That's why I brought her along. I don't care. Martha snapped. This is why I told my husband to fire you. Does this look like a hospital to you? If you want to keep your job, I don't want to see that thing you call a child anywhere near this house. With a heavy heart, Evelyn took Lily to the boys' quarters and laid her down. Then she started her chores, trying to focus on her work despite the pain in her heart. Later, Martha stormed into the boys' quarters and found Lily lying there. I told you to get rid of this thing, she yelled. What is she doing here? Ma'am, I'm sorry, Evelyn said quietly. I just laid her down here so I could complete my work. We are not saying the same thing. Martha retorted. I hired you, not this thing. If you can't take her away, you're fired. Leave my house, you useless woman. Evelyn knew she had no choice. She gathered her things, picked up Lily, and left the mansion, tears streaming down her face. As Evelyn walked away from the mansion, she turned back and whispered a curse under her breath. Any child that comes out of that woman's womb will be like my Lily, autistic. You called my child a thing and took away my only source of livelihood. You will see. Martha, who was standing at the door, heard Evelyn's words but didn't take them seriously. Leave with your useless curse, she shouted. Who do you think you are? When Mr. Robert returned home that evening, he asked Martha about Evelyn. Where's Evelyn? He asked. I needed her help with some work. Oh, she's gone, Martha replied casually. She resigned. Maybe she found a better job. Resigned? Without notice? Mr. Robert was shocked. That doesn't sound like Evelyn. I told you she wasn't what you thought she was, Martha said smugly. Good riddance, I say. We'll find someone better. Months passed, and Martha gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The child looked just like Mr. Robert, but something wasn't right. As the child grew, they noticed he had difficulty communicating and seemed different from other children. The doctors confirmed it, he was autistic. 2 years later, Martha gave birth to another boy, and again, the child was diagnosed with autism. Mr. Robert became increasingly frustrated. Why are all our children autistic? he demanded one day, his face red with anger. "If this happens again, I will send you back to your parents' house." Desperate, Martha sought help from a local prophet. She went to his temple and poured out her troubles. "Please, prophet, I'll pay anything. My husband is threatening to leave me because our children have autism. I'm pregnant again, and I'm scared." The prophet listened, then retreated to a small chamber. After several minutes, he returned with a grave expression. "Who is Evelyn?" the prophet asked. Martha thought for a moment. "Evelyn. Oh, yes. She was our housemaid a long time ago." The prophet nodded. "She laid a curse on your womb. She cursed you to have autistic children because of the way you treated her and her child. Only she can reverse the curse." Martha was overwhelmed with guilt and fear. "What have I done?" she cried. "I hated Evelyn for no reason. I took her curse lightly, and now I'm paying the price." Thanking the prophet, Martha left and began searching for Evelyn. But where could she find her? She had no idea where Evelyn lived now. Martha decided to show people Evelyn's picture, hoping someone would recognize her. She went from house to house, asking everyone she met. "Have you seen this woman?" she asked, showing Evelyn's photo. But everyone shook their heads. No one knew where Evelyn was. After 3 days of searching, Martha was exhausted and nearly hopeless. Then she remembered the gatekeeper who worked at their mansion. Maybe he would know. Martha hurried back to the mansion and called the gatekeeper. "Do you know where Evelyn lives?" she asked urgently. "Yes, ma'am," the gatekeeper replied. Martha's heart leaped with hope. "Take me to her, please." The gatekeeper led Martha to a poor, run-down neighborhood. The area was dirty and crowded, nothing like the luxurious mansion Martha lived in. When they arrived at Evelyn's small house, Martha felt a wave of shame and regret. Evelyn opened the door and was shocked to see Martha standing there. "Madam, what are you doing here?" Evelyn asked, clearly surprised. Martha fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Please forgive me, Evelyn," she sobbed. "I did so many wrongs to you. I lied to my husband about you because I was jealous. I hated you for no reason. Please, I beg you, reverse the curse you placed on me. My children, they are all autistic, and my husband is threatening to leave me." Evelyn was stunned by Martha's confession. She knelt down beside her former employer, tears in her own eyes. "Madam, please get up," Evelyn said gently. "I never wanted to harm you." Martha continued to plead. "Please, Evelyn, you're the only one who can help me. I've already lost so much. Please, reverse the curse." At that moment, Evelyn placed her hand on Martha's swollen belly. "Even though I made those pronouncements out of pain and injustice, but, from this day on," Evelyn said softly, "I reverse the curse. You will no longer give birth to autistic children." Martha looked up, her face a mix of relief and gratitude. She stood and embraced Evelyn. "Thank you," she whispered. "I have an apartment for you and Lily in my house. Not as a house help, but as a friend, as a sister." Evelyn was overwhelmed with emotion. She took Lily by the hand, and together, they left with Martha, heading back to the mansion. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt a glimmer of hope. 2 months later, Martha gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The entire family celebrated the new addition, and as the baby grew, it became clear that she was healthy and strong, without any signs of autism. Evelyn became a cherished member of the household, not as a servant but as a beloved friend. Martha and Mr. Robert were grateful to have her and Lily in their lives. The mansion, once filled with tension and bitterness, was now a place of joy and harmony. Evelyn's life had changed in ways she never imagined. She had found a family in the most unexpected of places, and her daughter, Lily, was growing up in a loving and supportive environment. In the end, both Evelyn and Martha learned valuable lessons about forgiveness, kindness, and the power of redemption. And so, they all lived together, their lives intertwined, finding peace and happiness after the storm. Their home was a place of love and unity, and the family was ready to embrace the new beginnings that lay ahead. They knew that their journey had not only strengthened their relationships but also taught them the value of compassion, understanding, and second chances. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and share for more amazing stories from Lovely Story Land.